We'd like to welcome everybody. Iowa basketball postgame here. Cory, Brada from the Hawkeye of the Storm and Coach Gary Close. We are here recapping Iowa's 109-61 victory over Western Michigan. Or, excuse me, I've still got Alabama State up there. Let me correct that. But an impressive performance, Gary, as I get this corrected. What were your initial takeaways? Again, weighing the opponent, weighing the fact that this is, 5 games in and we're about to ramp up competition. What did you like? Maybe what did you not like tonight?
Well, I think, anytime you play opponents where you're clearly better than they are and you can continue to play, good, solid, smart basketball, take care of the ball, get good shots, don't get lazy and bad habits on defense. That's impressive. I mean, they've had a string of games where they haven't been very competitive, and it's easy to lose your concentration and even in some cases your effort. And this team has not done that so far. They've come to play every game and buried every team they played. So I think that in itself is a real good sign.
And Gary, I said it to you before we went live. This, in my opinion, was their most complete performance, and that may be hard to measure when you're weighing the opponents they've played so far. Did you see the same thing, especially that first half? The defensive intensity was high. The activity level was high. I mean, again, maybe you leveled off a bit in the second half because you're up by 30. I just thought on both ends they played really well in that first half.
Yeah. And I like to look at the quality of the shots teams get. Sometimes teams get good shots and they just don't make them. And it makes your defense look better than it is when you're playing a team that's a little more capable and can make shots that are open. But they did not get very many good looks, and Iowa turned them over, both in the three-quarter court and the half court. So, yeah, I'd say they have to be pretty pleased with their defensive effort.
All right, we'll jump into the maybe overreacting right away. Ray comments, he says, this team is much better than the Garza-centered offense of last year, better defense too. Again, we're only 5 games in. I will say I did make a mental note in my head today, Gary, as I'm watching this game. I would be anxious to go back, and I'll do this at some point, and especially once we get into firmer competition, and kind of compare stats from last year to this year as far as offensive efficiency is concerned. Because I did at times feel like, especially in some of the early games, that maybe Garza was on the floor too much because everything had to run through him. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but this year it doesn't seem like the offense is dependent on Keegan, although it was for the first few minutes tonight. Do you see the same thing, or am I reading too much into that?
Well, they definitely got good depth as far as the offense goes. They've got some weapons. They did last year as well. I think, like you said, we're going to have to wait and see when you play against teams that can get out and cover on the perimeter. They're long, that are quick, that can apply pressure. They just have not faced that yet. They really have not faced a very strong defensive team, and until we do that, it's going to be a little bit hard to tell, because when you get into those situations, then you're going to need to have a little more variety in your scoring and being able to score inside, be able to get the free throw line. Where do you go when you need a big bucket? Things like that we just haven't had an opportunity to see yet because the competition just hasn't forced them to do that. But I think they have had some pretty solid performances on the defensive end. And hopefully that'll continue as the competition gets better and better.
We are here until about 10 p.m. If you want to give us a call, ask Coach Close a question, 515-635-1601. Our line is always open for that. One of the stats that has been impressive for this team specifically, and we've talked about it, Gary, is the three-point shooting. And, 12 is 26 tonight. Again, Western Michigan – it's so early, it's hard to weigh them this year. I know the Big Ten Network made a comment. The broadcasters commented that they were the 3rd best scoring defense in the MAC last year. Again, I don't know how much they lost and how much to read into that. But Peyton Sandfort, man, we commented on Thursday that he is not afraid to shoot. He goes 5 of 7 tonight from 3. He's growing more and more comfortable. You can see his ability to get inside as well. Mm-hmm. I'm impressed with that young man from Hawkeye.
Yeah, he's shooting with confidence. He's shooting quickly, shooting well. He has really looked good so far. That would be a big boost. You get a shooter like that coming off the bench. They actually had the numbers you love to see that are very hard to obtain. They shot over 50% from the field goal, over 40% from three, and over 80%, I believe, from the free throw line. So they shot it well everywhere.
Over 90%. They were 91.3% from the free on 23 attempts.
There you go. So they shot it well at every spot. So hopefully that'll continue. And it is contagious. You start getting people knocking shots down, both good and bad, and right now it's on a good roll.
They did get out rebounded tonight, Gary, by 38-37. We've talked about maybe concerns about rebounding, maybe a little lack of size inside, and of course no Josh Ogundele tonight. Is rebounding a concern given the fact that Iowa may have to play more zone against bigger teams?
It might be. That's a little bit hard to tell because Iowa made so many more shots than they did, so they obviously had many more opportunities to get offensive rebounds. So it's something we have to watch. I think their rebounding has been a little inconsistent, and I think it's a lot to do with the opponents. They really haven't had to get rebounds because they've been comfortably in the lead pretty much in every game they played.
And we mentioned Josh Ogundele, so he's out due to a non-COVID related illness. Patrick, another game he missed. That was a bit surprising to me, and I haven't heard from Fran. I'm sure he'll address it post-game. Sounded like last week it wasn't too serious, so it was disappointing not to see him out tonight. But I wouldn't say Patrick's necessarily a guy you need getting a ton of minutes. He's got a decent amount of experience, of course, in Big Ten play, Gary. Josh needs some minutes, though, and this was disappointing.
Yeah. This would have been a game for him to get a chance to get his feet wet and keep developing. But it gave those other guys a chance to play a little bit, and both of them did okay. But they both held their own in the limited minutes that they did play.
And just for anybody who is not caught up on the Josh Ogundele saga, so he commits to Iowa, can't get over here last year from the UK due to COVID restrictions. Then he gets here, he gets sick, never was really confirmed whether it was COVID or not, but he gets sick, he's out of shape, struggles to really get any time last year, partly because of being out of shape, and then, of course, the deep roster. Gets in shape, or at least better shape, loses a lot of weight heading into this season. Now he's sick again. Now, hopefully it's nothing serious, but I feel bad for that kid because he wants nothing more than to be able to help this team. And these are the games like you've talked about, Gary, where this is where you get primed for bigger competition down the road. Yeah,
that's one advantage of playing teams like this is hopefully you can use your bench and give some guys some minutes that'll help them. Even the game is out of hand, it's good to get them on the court, get them going up and down, and getting the opportunity to play in a live game.
And for anybody who's wondering why I was starting off with the likes of Longwood and, Western Michigan and UMKC, it's just for that reason. And Fran recognized the fact that he's got a young team, and it does grow old after a while. I'm sure even some of the older players. I looked at Jordan Bohannon on the bench today, and I'm thinking, I wonder what he thinks sitting here. All the big moments he's been in, Gary, and you've played your fifth straight or sixth straight if you count in the exhibition against lower tier opponents. But again, competition will increase. Tony Perkins, we raved about him last week. 15 points, 5 of 6 from the field. He's so long. We've talked about his ability in that press. He continues to impress me, Gary. Again,
I agree.
Against better competition.
As we said, I thought he came on last year. I thought he gave him some really good minutes off the bench last year, and he's looking like he's getting back into that type of situation this year, which will be great. That's another guard, another body, and you need guards, to be able to handle the ball, make shots, especially in a league like the Big Ten. So that's definitely encouraging.
We do have a caller here. Thank you for calling Iowa Basketball Postgame. Who's on the line?
Doug from Ames, Iowa. Thank you for taking my call. I've been an Iowa fan since November of '93 when I was a patient at the hospital there. I got to go to the black and gold blowout and watch Andre Woolrich tear it up and learn that transfers were ineligible because I couldn't understand why the best player on the team was ineligible. But I really wanted to say, if you have checked the net ratings, I was rated in the top 20, and I was curious how that's possible with the week schedule. I know they put offensive efficiency and other things as a factor. So I was just curious how they're so high, and how the net ratings take us to like the NCAA tournament and stuff.
I don't really know, and Gary, maybe you can comment on the net ratings. I guess I'm not as familiar with that rating system.
Yeah, I'm not either. And I did see they've gotten some votes in the AP poll, which puts them somewhere in the 30 range or a little more than that. And I think that's partly due to how well they played this year and then the type of team they were last year. So it's nice to see them get into that, get some votes right away. So that hopefully if they can continue to play well, they can get up even a little higher and even crack that top 25.
And I did notice Ken Palm. I don't know how much you pay attention to Ken Palm ratings. As a fan, Gary, I've always been intrigued by Ken Pomeroy and the work he does. And I think Iowa, last I saw, was ranked like 8th overall in offensive efficiency. Again, I don't know how you can possibly – it's just totally uneven when you have Gonzaga and these teams who are expected to be great, who are playing great competition, how you really weigh those with teams like Iowa. Haven't really gotten into that type of
even remember in doing scouting reports, you look at both their statistics, non-conference as well as conference, because some teams will play more difficult non-conference schedules than others, and their stats will reflect that. They're just not going to put up the kind of numbers that you would if you're playing a little bit of a weaker conference schedule. So you just gotta take everything into consideration, and I think something like that. The level of competition, I don't even know is even considered. So those numbers will put them way up there because they're putting up some really good numbers.
And appreciate our caller from right here in Ames. So it's good to have him call in, and I'm sure you were
I'm surprised they let him through.
Well, the 1993 black and gold blowout, I was thinking about that. Yeah, you would have been there for that, right?
I would have been to that one, yeah.
You missed the old black and gold blowouts? So what was
they
that
were
like?
Fun. Not only did I miss those, but the fans that have been around for a while will know that we used to do community scrimmages where we would go out to communities and play a inter-squad scrimmage. And they go to Marshalltown or go to Fort Dodge or Dubuque, and they would be packed.
Oh, yeah.
And it would be a really, really big deal to the local communities. And it was fun. It gave us a chance to have an inter-squad scrimmage with fans, with referees, and also give something back to the community. And it was pretty neat. I don't know exactly when that all came to an end, but when I first got here, I was blown away by those type of things and how well they were attended.
And I am from Marshalltown, and so I've heard about those stories about Iowa coming to town, and it'd be great to get that back. I don't think it's ever going to come back, unfortunately, just given
probably not. Yeah, probably not. Sign of the times, but no, probably not.
And Mark makes a very fair comment. They go from playing teams, and right now, by the way, Gary, for this game, and I don't know how the final number 109 weighs into the number here, but Iowa leads the country in points per game. Again, I don't think you can read too far into it, but they're averaging, I would guess now with this performance, over 98 points per game.
Mm-hmm.
And they go their game on Monday. Of course, they play Friday against Portland State, but their game Monday is against maybe the best defensive team in the country as far as the last 10 years with Tony Bennett. So It's going to be, you're going to go from scoring 110 to maybe struggling to hit 60 against a Virginia squad. Care to offer any early thoughts on that game, given what we've seen?
Well, we talked a little about it before, Cory. It's going to be interesting because they have, as we talked about, they have faced so little resistance defensively. It's been like one pass were wide open, either inside or outside, and you got uncontested shots, and you haven't had to work hard to get a good shot. And now all of a sudden you're going to be playing a team that's really strong, fundamentally sound defensively. It's going to take longer to get good shots. You're not going to get a lot of easy transition baskets, so they're going to get back. So it's going to be an abrupt change, going from scoring really easily and not even have to work real hard to get a good shot. And all of a sudden, every possession is going to be a grind. And then they're going to make you play defense at the other end. They're not going to – a lot of these teams have played Iowa so far, and they have not been patient. They've made one or two passes and shot the ball, whether it's a good shot or not. And of course, that allows Iowa to run quicker, and so all of that's going to kind of grind to a halt. And so it'll be interesting mentally if they can handle that change, because it's going to be a significant change from a tempo standpoint and to a quality of defensive standpoint.
And certainly we've talked about Virginia's defensive prowess. We've also documented their struggles in general this year. They've lost to Navy. Of course, they lost to a really good Houston team. So This may not be the national title level of Virginia squad, at least not at this point in November. So maybe some vulnerability there. And of course, you're going on the road, which Iowa has not done.
Yeah.
Several of these young guys have not done.
Yeah. They've had a hard time scoring. So it'll be interesting to see if Iowa can continue to hold teams down like they've had. That's been I think defensively they've been fairly solid, but offensively they've had a little trouble scoring. So that'll be interesting to see.
Max Bauer, I've said the same thing. He says, I think we need to play Josh versus Illinois, Michigan, man-to-man. Otherwise, you'll have to play zone, throw double teams. I know you've kind of downplayed that notion, Gary. You think maybe we can survive with man-to-man defense with Keegan at the 5 at times against more athletic teams, bigger teams. You still feel that way with Hunter Dickinson and Kofi Coburn, those guys?
Yeah, we'll have to see. Obviously you don't want to get him into foul trouble, and so I think if those matchups are not to Iowa's advantage, then I think you'll probably see more zone than man to A, keep people out of foul trouble, and B, to try to contain their inside players with the zone. So far they haven't had to do that because from a man defensive standpoint, they've been able to dominate with that defense. So you could see more zone against teams like that have more dominant big men to, like I said, to keep them out of foul trouble and to try to control their inside players.
And this is a great stat. Iowa's bench 63 outscored Western Michigan's team 63-61. Max brings up Murray's great. Tony Perkins needs more love. Absolutely agree with that. And so we look at their efficiency again, 7 turnovers tonight. And again, I keep saying this is a young team. And sometimes in these early games, when you see higher turnover counts, am I wrong, Gary? And it's just not happening for this team.
Yeah, and in games that get out of hand, you kind of lose your concentration and try to do things you're not capable of doing. And that's where you get some sloppy turnovers. They've had very few sloppy turnovers, or the ones that drive coaches crazy. And you don't want, you'll make a great move and they'll call a charge, or you make a pretty good pass that a guy fumbles or something like that. But when the bad ones where you just make dumb plays, those are the ones that really get you beat, and they've avoided those almost completely in these first few games.
And Keegan Murray, we've talked about his efficiency. I think he scored the first 15 or so points. I kind of got distracted at one point because the Big Ten Network's audio went completely out. Don't know what happened there. And I did notice.
I think Jeff Sells was talking too much, and they just pulled the plug on him.
I did notice they were not at this game, were they, Gary?
I don't think so. But I don't know for sure.
Yeah. I don't think they were. And I was going to actually compliment Kevin Kugler because he's is he the voice of the Vikings? He's the voice of some NFL team. He does their Sunday TV work, and so I thought, man, he's got a long weekend. Yeah, but I think he was either in a studio or at home doing this game. But I like Kevin Kugler. And
then we won't give him as much credit then.
We won't. Okay, I want to take the last few minutes of our show here, Gary.
Okay.
Kind of comparing Iowa to the rest of the Big Ten and just talking about this Big Ten's performance early, because I've asked you this question: is the Big Ten overrated? We saw the Big Ten struggle in tournament play last year after what we thought was a really good regular season. The Big Ten ends up going 2-6 versus the Big East in the Gavitt games. Not a number you want. I think the Big East is underrated, and they're starting to get the respect they deserve.
Yeah.
But since we last talked, Gary, here are some of the takeaways for me, at least. Michigan, a win versus UNLV, a loss versus Arizona was a fairly lopsided loss. Purdue has been by far the most impressive Big Ten team. They beat North Carolina the very next day. They come back, beat a top 10 Villanova team.
Beat a good Villanova team.
Tournament. Yeah. Wisconsin bounces back today with a win over A&M. Of course, we know Ohio State losing to Xavier, beating Seton Hall, which was a big win today for the Big Ten. And Illinois I don't want to make too much of this, But boy, they get blown out by Cincy tonight, just about a week after getting beat by Marquette.
Yeah.
And of course, we saw Rutgers losing to DePaul and to Lafayette. And of course, the Maryland struggles. They got beat by George Mason, then escaped Hofstra. Of all those teams, are there concerns for you about the stability of this conference right now?
Well, I would say the coaches of all those teams are concerned, but that's not uncommon, at the beginning of the year. In some cases, they've played very good competition. In some cases, they've lost some really good players. I mean, Michigan lost 3 really good players. Now, they got a lot of good players back, but they're young, and they're trying to fit them in. And, Illinois did not have the big guy for the first 2 or 3 games, so they're trying to fit him in. They look a little undisciplined and not in the type of form that they want to be. And so I think you'd be a little worried there, but it's still early. I think we'll get to know a little more in a week or so when the ACC Big Ten Challenge it takes place. But I think what you're seeing is that a lot of those teams, while they're talented, they've lost some real good players that they have not been able to replace yet, even though they've got young talent replacing. They're just not as good as what they've replaced so far. Now that can obviously change, and that's coaching. That's when we talk about wanting to get your teams to improve. That's what they've got to do. But as of right now, they're all developing teams that have got some weaknesses they've got to get better at, and quickly, because the Big Ten season's around the corner.
Absolutely. So a few notable games prior to the ACC Big Ten Challenge. So some opportunities for the Big Ten to rack up some wins. Right now, Northwestern is trailing Providence 58-48. That would be a good win for Northwestern, but not looking great. 7 minutes to go in that game.
Yeah, that's a Providence team that won at Wisconsin, so that's a pretty good team.
And speaking of Wisconsin, they have an opportunity to turn some heads tomorrow against number 12 Houston, who's looked really good in Maui. That will be a big game at 4:00, Gary, and I'm sure you'll be watching that. What do you make of Wisconsin? I'm assuming you watched them today against A&M.
Well, I got to see them a little bit. They actually got off to a pretty slow start.
They did
not play well defensively, and then they really tightened it down the last 10 minutes of the half and probably into the second half. And the last 30 minutes played really well. First 10 minutes, they were not very good. But and I'm not sure how good Texas A&M is. They were undefeated, but they had not played anybody. So you'll get an idea of Wisconsin tomorrow when they play Houston. But they got Davis back, and I think he was their leading scorer. So they did not have him for the Providence game. So that was a factor in their first loss.
Davis and Davison both look good. Michigan State will play Loyola Chicago in a couple of days. Maryland gets Richmond. Penn State gets LSU. And I think that brings us into the Big Ten ACC Challenge, which begins Monday. Of course, Iowa, Virginia, Notre Dame, Illinois. So the Big Ten will have an opportunity in that challenge, but there are also some opportunities here these next few days to get back on the horse.
In another week or 10 days, we'll have a better feel for where the teams stand. I agree with you. I think Purdue right now looks, and I think they have most of their guys back. They look head and shoulders right now above everybody else, but that can change. That's it's still early, but they have looked really, really good so far.
And before we go, Gary, Doug asks, can Coach tell us what exactly a pack line defense is?
Well, it's a defense that I think you have to give Dick Bennett credit for. He's kind of the one that originated it, and it's basically, not to get too complicated, it's a positioning of your players, specifically your help positioning, so that you can try to prevent as much penetration as possible. That the theory being that if you're giving up a lot of penetration, whether it's dribble or pass, it's going to break your defense down, and from there you can give up easy shots around the basket. You can give it kickouts for open threes. And so putting your defense in a line that can prevent teams from penetrating as much as they would like. A layman's definition there.
Oh, that's great. Excellent. And for anybody who doesn't know who Dick Bennett was, father of Tony Bennett, correct?
Yeah. Coach of Wisconsin, and then the father of Tony, and kind of the father of the as far as I know. Now, maybe there's somebody that did got it off of you. That's how those things work. You just kind of follow him down the chain. But he's the one that is considered the real developer and teacher of that.
Do you still hear rumblings about people wanting Tony Bennett to take over at Wisconsin? Or is that sort of, because I've heard that in recent years?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of programs that would like to have Tony Bennett. He's a terrific coach, and I think those naturally come because he's from here, coached here, played at Green Bay, was an assistant on Bo's staff actually, and actually that's the guy I replaced when I went up there. He left with his dad to go to Washington State, so
okay,
he's got a lot of ties back here, family back here, so it's a natural. But he sure is in a real good spot in Virginia and doing an unbelievable job. So I don't see him going anywhere soon, but I guess you never know.
Absolutely. And Ray brings up Keegan Murray, 29 points in 22 minutes. That's efficiency. Circle Herc was doing his own play-by-play when Big Ten Network's audio dropped. So we go Circle Herc there. And for anybody who maybe didn't catch the beginning of our podcast or wants to share this with other people, please share our show out on social media. It helps us to grow and get the word out about this show so other people can enjoy it. And also, I'm going to put this on the bottom ticker here. If you want to hear the on-demand version or the podcast version of this show, as well as our shows with Coach Don Patterson from the Iowa, the Voice of College Football channel, search From the Hawkeye of the Storm on Spotify, Google, Anchor, wherever you listen to your podcast, and you can listen to the on-demand version of this show with Gary. And again, every show that we do here at From the Hawkeye of the Storm. And of course, moving forward, Gary, Iowa has really one more game now, at least for the time being, against what we would say, I guess, a mid-major, and then it really ramps up. So Friday they get, I'm going to try and find my banner here, they get Portland State. And so Friday, of course, 6 p.m. Central Time. So
Okay.
Iowa fans are going to have a busy day because you got the Black Friday game against Nebraska, which we found out today. Adrian Martinez.
Great day to be a Hawkeye fan on Friday.
It's going to be a busy day.
Yeah.
And so anybody who is here for the whole day, you've got Iowa and Nebraska, 12:30 on FS1. I'll be jumping on with Don Patterson for postgame. And then, of course, Iowa, Portland State, 6 o'clock Friday on BTN Plus. And then I'll be jumping on. We'll do an Iowa postgame following that game. And Gary, you'll be down in Iowa City. We'll try to make something work with your schedule. But
yeah, we'll see what we can
we'll
do.
be here regardless. So, again, help us out, share our show out on social media. And as always, Gary, we appreciate the time this evening. And again, we're getting closer and closer to much better competition.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun here. It's starting real quick. Should be an interesting next couple weeks.
All right, Gary. For Gary Close, Coach Gary Close, I'm Cory Brada from the Hawkeye of the Storm. We appreciate you listening, and we will talk to you soon. Have a great night.